My name is Hardes van der Berg. I am a representative of D6, and we are busy starting a series on schools, time in the year, and what is important for schools, governing bodies, and senior management teams to take into consideration when planning for next year and having everything ready. Today we have Riaan van der Bergh from Fedsas with us, and I'm going to ask him a couple of questions and his opinion and in his experience on what schools have to get in place. Hello, Riaan.
Hello, Hardes. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you here. Thank you for joining. Riaan, let's start with this. What is Fedsas doing in the school industry, and how do you help schools at this stage?
Fedsas is a governing body association. That means that we serve governing bodies. Most public schools, well, all public schools need to have a governing body, a statutory body that is elected every 3 years, that consists of a majority of parents, the principal, school-based educators and non-educators, and in the high school, even learners who serve a term of a year. So we serve the schooling sector with governance advice, even serve the independent sector at this point in time, but all matters governance when it comes to finance, when it comes to discipline, when it comes to navigating the relationship with the department. That is the space that we function in.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks, Riaan. So yes, let's focus with this session on the finance department and the budget. I know a lot of schools got their their governing body budget meetings now to plan for what do we need next year, where are we going to spend the money, and what are we going to get in with school fees and all that kind of things. What is the type of important things that they need to remember when setting up a budget?
Yeah, number one, budget in a school cycle. It's happening now because it's got to be finalized before the end of November, and there is a cycle of the number of days for notice of the period. So budgeting exercises probably started towards the end of July already, and schools prepping themselves so that they can gear up for the annual general meeting, which should take place with a quorum of 10% or 15% in some provinces. Gauteng has a 15% quorum, and some provinces don't have a quorum requirement. But the important issues in a budget is that it is a legal requirement to go through a good process to figure out what does the school want to spend extra money on. Not all schools in the country are fee-paying schools, but the fee-paying schools have the right as well as the obligation to supplement the funding they receive from the Department of Education in such a way that all parents are then obligated by means of a majority vote at the AGM to say what the school fees are for next year. Those fees are then distributed or invested in the schooling, the extra effort that the school makes to enhance the quality of the education of the learners. We must take into account that school is about serving the learners and making them, improving the education so that they are ready for the workplace of the future.
Okay, so in my experience, every school's got a different process, and everything is not. There's no blueprint. With budgeting, is there something like that?
Yeah, I think there's a timeline blueprint at least, and then there's good financial principles that become the blueprint. From the Fedsas point of view, we say that we should budget from a zero base every year and compare what we want to do, what we ask for the parents to pay for with the vision and mission of the school. So we suggest that a school looks seriously at what they want to achieve and then apply the budget towards those elements. It's no use saying that we want to, include all learners, but we spend all the money on one sport. That we want to be an academically strong school, but we do not add extra teachers to support, reducing class sizes and running extra academical programs. So the schools have got to make sure that their vision and their true north, where they spend their money, align. And the important things in a budget, we see in budgets traditionally that some of the important things are probably 50% and more spent on staff, salaries for support staff, for academical staff, for terrain staff, and for extra work performed by state employed employees. So a big chunk of the money goes into people because people make the difference. And then other elements would be maintenance of the building and terrain, where the Department of Education has limited budget, and the parents and the community want to make sure that their kids go to school in a nice environment. Other elements would include IT infrastructure, possibly utilities, electricity and water, or projects that would enhance the school's performance or save money in the long term.
Yes, 100%. So schools, do they get governed and regulated on where they spend the money? I mean, apart from the parents that they need to be transparent with?
No, the oversight at school would be the governing body. The statutory position, legal obligation, the fiduciary right of governing body members, I think is sometimes overlooked. The governing body stands in a position of trust towards the school as well as to the community to ensure that the funds that the school get are spent wisely according to the approved budget. So you can't go outside of the budget. You can't go suddenly speculate on something or invest the money in high risk. You've got to apply the money where you presented the money to be spent at the annual general meeting. So the oversight lies very much in the hands of the governing body, with a finance committee being suggested by the Schools Act to be set up. The principal has to be, by law, a member of the finance committee. So there's a few checks and balances in that process. And then a school, and this is very important, a school needs to have their books audited like any company. Okay. So audited by a registered accountant and auditor with the full audit and the audit report to disclose any possible issues. So there's a strong oversight, as strong as for a public company or a private company.
Mm. Okay, so that brings up a question on the principal's mandate in that kind of meeting, budget allocating and everything. What can he do and what should he not be doing?
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand the principal's role. The principal is a member of the governing body, but he's also an employee of the school, of the Department of Education, and he is the CEO at school. So the governing body sets the budget, the principal is part of the whole process, and then the business needs to run. But you cannot step outside of the budgeted expenses. It's legally required for a school to have a financial policy as set by the governing body, and the principal and officials at school should act within the financial policy, and in that would be mandates for signing authorities, what level of the size of a transaction can be approved, where is a second signature required, above which level do we need 3 quotes, above which level do we need to go to a tender process. All these elements about the whole procurement cycle and payment cycle needs to be covered in the financial policy as set by the school and the governing body. A principal cannot necessarily do a lot of things by him or herself outside of that. So the management, the professional management of the school requires the principal to stay within the confines of the law, and the principal should be one of the officials at school and on the governing body that knows what the legal requirements are and what compliance need to be achieved. The principal also need to be the person to guide the governing body in processes surrounding the Schools Act, because the majority of members on the governing body, the parents, are not trained to be in that space, although a lot of people are very qualified and come from business and understand corporate governance, which is effectively what the Schools Act requires from a governing body. The principal cannot, in isolation, make any decisions, suddenly close the tuck shop or suddenly go buy a bus, or suddenly, even if that is in the budget, because it needs to be within the confines of the policy and then the virtuous cycle of good governance, which includes trust, openness, and respect. It's a very dangerous place for the principal to be in, and usually when something goes wrong at a school, I just had a dealing with some trade unions, the principals are under severe scrutiny for financial misconduct. And the oversight there is the governing body as a support system, the financial committee, to report, to produce reports, to have insights, to share the information. We've got a big drive in Fedsas to talk about the democratizing of information, and systems like D6, other systems in the financial space that report, that have good, solid reporting and insights for the people that sit on a governance level to see, is it going well with the business? We don't want a bunch of emojis at a meeting to say, yes, thumbs up, finances are good. Thumbs down, debtors are bad. We need reports with numbers and tables and columns on and comparisons. And that's going to safeguard the principal in his mandate. And possibly digress now to the oversight, but the principal is not a lone ranger at school. And we suggest they work closely with the treasurer and the rest of the finance committee and the governing body in total disclosure with what goes on in the budgeting process, setting of salaries, contracts that you enter into. It is definitely the arena where a lot of principals burn their fingers.
Okay, and let's say through the year, or they finalize a budget now, but January, February, they see, okay, we forgot about this, or this came up, or there was floods like in KZN. What do the schools do in that situation?
That's a very interesting question, because we just came through COVID a few years ago where no one budgeted for sanitizer and PPE and all these kind of things. The Fedsas resolutions, draft resolutions at the AGM include a resolution where we suggest that the final number in the budget, what that balance is of total expenses, be fixed. So that then gives us a final number of what school fees are going to be for the next year. 1,000, 2,000 Rand per learner per month, or something to that effect. But we include a suggested resolution to allow the SGB to take from one line item and reallocate to another line item, given that things may change and there could be a saving on one or no need for one. So we saved on the tour because COVID hit us, but we needed money for sanitizer or IT equipment to do online lessons. In that case, you don't have to reset the budget and recall the parents to annual general meeting or a special general meeting so that they can re-vote on the budget. You allocate from the one line item to the other line item, but the total net effect of the budget stays the same.
Okay. I know this is maybe a longer discussion, but can you maybe just in a overview gives us an example of how a budget is structured in a school environment?
Yeah, the big line items will definitely be human resources, human capital. So you will add up all the roles that you need and structure a payroll budget for that. And that would be, in most cases, 50, 60, and sometimes even up to 70% of the expenses of the school will be the staffing. That is fairly fixed because you have either one-year contracts or permanent contracts with staff members. And to change that, there's a much longer process. But that would be a big line item. Other elements that would be very important would follow your vision and the school's plan. So school takes place in a building on a campus. So utilities would be a big line item, possible, call it a green project for solar and rainwater harvesting and LED lights to reduce. So building related and utility related expenses. Then maintenance. Maintenance, we've got to fix the broken windows before we have a broken building. So whatever we need to do maintenance, that's a big element in that. and then potential expansion projects, a cricket pitch, redoing a tennis court, fixing the offices, upgrading classrooms with IT equipment or network and that sort of thing. So that you've got staff, you've got the place where they work, and now what they do. Curriculum support, so academical support. What do we need? It's textbooks, training for staff, learning support material. The department supports schools with, all schools will know their LTSM, learning and training support material budget, but schools will add to that to say, this is our core business, that's what we need to do. A big issue then would be, from a governing body point of view, the extramural and extracurricular activities at a school. It is not compulsory at a school to do the 7 deadly sins of rugby, cricket, netball, hockey, debate choir, chess, and those things. Those are extra because the community requires them, and we know it's good for learners to compete, to develop skills. So extracurricular and extramural activities would be part of the budget. And how do we do that? Transport to events, marketing. I'm trying to think of a few other elements that might be smaller slices of the pizza, but those would be the ones that I mentioned. Those would be the big elements, 5 or 6 big elements: support material, support staff, academical activities, building maintenance and expansion, and then your salaries.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot to think about, especially if you have a vision and a mission at the school to align that. Okay, so just in closing, Riaan, I think you did mention it in the beginning, but so the budget meetings is now set for October, November. When does that need to be finalized, and who do they send that to, or is it just a thing about between the parents and the SGB?
Yeah, it's also an interesting question because the school is a public school and not a state school. So the school must do the budget for itself. There's no legal requirement to send the budget into the department. The department is not the head office of school. The department is a partner in the public schooling structure. So we advocate that position quite strongly, and there's a narrative, especially in the media and some other arenas, that, yeah, we've got state schools. We don't have state schools. The public school model is a school for the community, governed by the majority from people in the community, and they have oversight on the processes in the school and report to the community. Yes, there's the audit, and a school needs to submit its audited financials to the department 6 months after year end. So there is some other process to ensure that checks and balances are followed. But the budget is for the school, by the school, to the parents, and approved. The timelines require that, you can't have a budget meeting late in November when half the people are already disengaged and possibly already going on leave. You need to settle and finalize your budget in such a time that, should you not have a quorum, if your province requires a quorum, that you can advertise the second meeting with ample notice time, and I think it's 21 days. So the first meeting is a notice period of 30 days. The second meeting is a meeting notice period of 21 days. So you need 51 days, counting back from, say, early November, middle November, to start your process of notice for the meetings. If you are lucky enough to have your quorum at the first meeting, great. Then you don't require those times. But the budget approved by the AGM, by the parents, by majority vote, needs to then be approved and accepted by the governing body who suggested the budget, so that the budget is in play and official. Only then can the money in that budget be spent. If a school spends money that is not approved in a budget, that is illegally spent, and someone can come and the SGB members are personally liable for repayment should that take place, and can be taken taken to task on that. So yeah, the governing body members need to understand their fiduciary duty and their personal obligation, as well as potential liability in managing the school's budget and the school's finances.
Okay, for all the principals and the governing body members listening to this, what's the best advice you can give them out of your experience the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think what's critical at this point in time uh, is to look towards the future and see what is required. There's a saying by Henry Ford that if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. The world that we're living in is changing fast. Society is changing fast. Technology is changing fast. And I think one's got to be on a zero base and look towards the future and see what is required at school, not just perpetuate what we've always done very successfully in the past. What we are concerned about these days is since the masks came off, a lot of people defaulted back to 2019 and said, oh, luckily we don't live in the emergency state of COVID anymore, but we're forgetting the good value, the good lessons learned in COVID. And I urge principals, school leaders, governing body members to say, what should we really be spending our money on? Ask a lot of why questions, and then also ask why not questions. Why are we not doing esports at school? Why are we not having Wi-Fi in classes? Why are we not getting a 3D printer? Just a few off the wall suggestions maybe. Why do we not have a YouTube channel that broadcasts the sport in the hall, or the extramural activities in the hall, in the classroom, on the fields, so that we use the tools of our time and be more efficient?
Sure, that is very good advice. Riaan, thank you very much for your time and your effort to come and give us some knowledge and guidance on budgets and everything. And yeah, for everybody listening, principals, governing bodies, even head of departments, there's always somebody that can help you if you struggle with something. Either a D6 representative of Fedsas, just a call away. Where can they get hold of you, Riaan?
Very easy. www.fedsas.org.za. Our whole team's contact details are there, but yeah, they're welcome to contact us.
All around South Africa?
All around South Africa. We're representative in each province.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Riaan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.